June 18th, 2023. Seal Island, Mossel Bay, South Africa. An orca known to researchers by the distinctive rightward bend of its collapsed dorsal fin closes on a juvenile great white shark approximately 800 meters offshore. The shark is roughly 2.5 meters long. A fully grown adult would clear 4 or 5. The orca's name is Starboard. He seizes the shark's left pectoral fin, thrusts forward repeatedly. The shark is eviscerated. The liver, an organ that can account for approximately 1/3 of a great white's total body mass, dense with the lipids the shark uses for buoyancy and long-distance migration, is consumed. Port, Starboard's partner, was present about 100 meters away. He didn't participate. He didn't need to. Elapsed time, under 2 minutes. Starboard and Port have been working the South African and Namibian coastline since at least 2009, when they were first documented near Lüderitz. Their collapsed dorsal fins, Port's bends left, Starboard's right, make them immediately identifiable across a range spanning thousands of kilometres. False Bay, Cape Town, Gansbaai, Mossel Bay, Port Elizabeth. Since 2017, at least 8 great white shark carcasses have washed ashore near Gansbaai and Struisbaai, carrying their signature: large ventral incisions between the pectoral fins, livers removed, the rest of the carcass intact. Alison Towner at Rhodes University's Dyer Island Conservation Trust conducted the necropsies. She documented a wound pattern that was methodical and repeated across multiple animals. The same technique, the same anatomical target, the same extraction. In May 2022, drone and helicopter footage near Mossel Bay provided the first direct, peer-reviewed video documentation. 5 orcas attacking at least 2 great whites, extracting organs, published in the journal Ecology, with Starboard confirmed by his dorsal fin. The technique exploits tonic immobility, a reversible state of near paralysis that great white sharks enter when physically restrained and inverted. Muscle relaxation, reduced struggling, stilled breathing. In controlled experiments, dorso-ventral inversion triggers the response reliably. Off California, a female orca held a great white upside down for approximately 15 minutes until it suffocated. In the Gulf of California, orca groups were filmed ramming great whites to flip them before accessing the liver. For Port and Starboard, that workflow refined into something that no longer resembled a hunt. Seize the pectoral fin, apply forward thrust to invert, extract the organ, move on. Towner's 2023 paper in the African Journal of Marine Science tracked 14 GPS-tagged great whites that rapidly left the Gansbaai area when Port and Starboard were present. Some didn't return for weeks. Off California's Farallon Islands in 2000, a single orca killed 1 great white, and the resulting carcass caused every other white shark in the vicinity to clear out entirely. Animals that have triggered beach closures and sat at the top of coastal food webs for millions of years, they leave when orcas arrive. They don't assess the situation. They leave. Orcas aren't specialists operating in a single region. Off Patagonia, they beach themselves deliberately to take sea lions from the surf. Off Norway, they herd herring into bait balls using coordinated tail slaps. In the Pacific Northwest, they crack the skulls of halibut. There is no large marine predator that orcas haven't, somewhere on this planet, developed a methodology to kill. They hunt in coordinated groups, transmit technique across generations, and adapt to new prey within years. The research literature documents them hunting great whales, sharks, pinnipeds, turtles, seabirds, and fish across every major ocean. Their dominance isn't regional or circumstantial, and the ocean's food chain does not end with them, a fact that requires 35 orcas, 4 hours, and a wound and withdraw strategy applied to a single pod to begin to understand. October 1997. Robert Pittman of the National Marine Fisheries Service was aboard a research vessel in the eastern North Pacific, approximately 130 kilometers off the central California coast. when his team encountered a confrontation already in progress. Approximately 35 killer whales, a pod of 9 sperm whales. Pittman, along with Balance, Mesnick and Chivers, documented what they observed and published it in Marine Mammal Science in 2001. The first well-documented, peer-reviewed account of orcas conducting a lethal attack on sperm whales. The paper describes the orca group's method precisely. Adult female killer whales, some with calves, attacked in waves of 4 to 5 animals. They injured and retreated, what Pittman's team called a wound and withdraw strategy, designed to accumulate damage through attrition rather than direct confrontation. The adult males stood off to the side, not threatened away, not driven back, choosing to wait. The paper records what happened when the males finally moved. Adult male killer whales stood by until the very end, when one charged in and quickly killed a seriously wounded sperm whale that had been separated from the group. 4 hours, 35 orcas. The adult males held position until the target was already incapacitated and isolated before they closed in. 1 adult female confirmed dead and eaten, 3 or 4 others likely mortally wounded. Compare that to Mossel Bay. Under 2 minutes, 1 orca, 1 great white. The disparity in time, coordination and risk committed is the exhibit. The disparity is the hierarchy rendered in operational terms. Orcas do attack sperm whales, and the record is broader than that single California encounter. A 2025 paper in Aquatic Mammals documented a confirmed kill off Guanaga, Honduras, where floating blubber and skin recovered at the surface confirmed predation. Encounters have been recorded in Sri Lankan waters, off Brazil, and in the Gulf of Mexico. In 2015, researchers Witt and colleagues documented the first known instance of killer whales harassing sperm whales in the Gulf of Mexico, noting that the orcas appeared to be testing the group for vulnerable individuals rather than committing to a full attack. The scientific record does not describe 2 species that never interact. It describes an interaction with a cost structure that differs entirely from anything else orcas hunt. Pittman noted in subsequent coverage that orca groups likely regularly test sperm whale pods, and that sperm whales probably succeed in fending off attackers in many cases. That phrasing, probably succeed in many cases, does not appear in descriptions of orca prey. It appears in descriptions of orca adversaries. In 2013, Cure and colleagues published a controlled playback experiment in Scientific Reports. They broadcast mammal-eating killer whale vocalizations to male sperm whales in the wild and measured the response. The results were consistent: interrupted deep foraging dives, shallower and earlier surfacing than baseline, reduced or silenced vocal output, increased social clustering. These are the measurable signatures of anti-predator vigilance in an animal that previously had been described in some historical accounts as essentially immune to predation. Cure's paper concluded that killer whale predation likely has a small effect at the population level, but a large effect on individual behavior and sociality of sperm whales. At the population level, sperm whales persist. At the individual level, every animal that hears an orca call has a direct stake in what the group decides to do next. A 2025 study by Griffiths and colleagues examined the acoustic and behavioral responses of adult male sperm whales when harassed by orcas in high-latitude waters. The paper's title uses the phrase skittish males in high latitudes, language that describes observable behavioral subordination in adult male sperm whales when orcas are present. Adult males are the largest individuals the species produces, running up to 18 meters and weighing 50 tons or more. Their response to orca harassment is documented, measurable, and consistent enough to be characterized in a paper title as skittish. The data named what it found. The Marguerite Formation is what happens when sperm whales detect orcas and choose to hold their ground rather than disperse. Heads pointing inward toward the center, tails radiating outward in all directions, calves and injured individuals protected in the interior. Ornboom, Papastavrou, Filegart and Whitehead first formally documented it in a 1987 paper in the Canadian Journal of Zoology. The name, Marguerite, French for daisy, comes from the petal-like geometry viewed from above. The sperm whale's tail is proportionally larger than that of any other cetacean and highly flexible. Pittman noted that a direct tail strike from a sperm whale could be life-threatening to a killer whale. To reach a calf in the center of a rosette, an orca must pass through a rotating perimeter of those flukes. The 35 orcas in 1997 didn't attempt the formation directly. They worked the periphery for 4 hours, attempting to isolate individuals from the margin.
When they succeeded in pulling one individual free, the paper records what happened next. 1 or 2 sperm whales broke their own defensive formation, flanked the isolated animal, and guided it back inside, accepting personal attack risk to restore the group's integrity. That altruism cost them additional casualties by Pittman's assessment. The rosette isn't an impenetrable shield. It's a structure that forces the attacker to pay a price for every meter of progress, and that makes sperm whale group defense unlike any other collective response orcas encounter from large marine prey. In February 2024, off Bremer Canyon in southern Western Australia, an orca group approached a sperm whale pod. The sperm whales formed the rosette. Whale Watch Western Australia's field account of the encounter is specific. At least one sperm whale released a large fecal cloud into the water. One orca ended up coated in the material and peeled away from the formation.
A second orca attempted to break the rosette and encountered the same deterrent. The orcas disengaged without a confirmed predation. Naturaliste Charters, which has been operating in the Bremer Canyon area for over a decade, noted they had witnessed multiple orca-sperm whale interactions in that area across the years. Whether the fecal release is a deliberate defensive strategy or a stress response that incidentally repels predators isn't confirmed in the scientific literature. What the Western Australia encounter confirms is that the orcas left without a kill. A large bull sperm whale runs between 16 and 18 meters in length and weighs approximately 45 to 50 tons. A large orca reaches 6 to 8 tons. The bull outweighs it by a factor of 5 to 6. The head alone, a blunt, squared structure occupying between 1/4 and 1/3 of total body length, can extend to 25 feet in a mature male. These teeth are used primarily in intraspecific combat between males rather than routine prey capture, since sperm whales catch most prey by suction. The skulls of adult males above approximately 13 meters carry distinct parallel scarring consistent with intraspecific fighting, and this scarring deepens and widens with age. Older males are more heavily marked. The record of those encounters is written directly onto bone. These aren't animals that avoid conflict among their own. In 2002, Carrier and colleagues proposed in the Journal of Experimental Biology that the spermaceti organ, the massive waxy structure filling the forward section of the skull, evolved in part as a battering ram. Their framing was direct. We suggest that the greatly enlarged and derived melon of sperm whales, the spermaceti organ, evolved as a battering ram to injure an opponent. In 2016, Panayotopoulou and colleagues used finite element analysis, published in Peer J, to test the structural response of the forehead to impact loading. The connective tissue partitions within the junk, the lower compartmentalized fat section beneath the spermaceti case, redistribute and absorb stress during head-on collision in ways consistent with both force delivery and skull protection. The architecture addresses the mechanical problem of repeatedly striking a hard surface at speed without destroying the structure during the striking. November 20th, 1820. The whale ship Essex, 238 tons, out of Nantucket, Massachusetts, having departed August 12, 1819, was running approximately 2,000 nautical miles west of South America in the open equatorial Pacific when a sperm whale struck the port side.
The whale dove and resurfaced near the ship.
First mate Owen Chase, in his 1821 published account, describes what the whale did next. It turned and charged, with what he called tenfold fury and vengeance. It struck the Essex bow on. The ship sank. Of approximately 20 crew members, 8 survived, 5 rescued from whaleboats, 3 who remained on Henderson Island. The survivors resorted to cannibalism in the weeks that followed. Chase described it as the first recorded instance of a sperm whale's attacking a ship. This was a 2-stage attack. The whale struck once, paused, then turned and charged harder, aimed differently, at the bow rather than the side, against a 238-ton vessel, and the ship went down. Melville used this incident as the template for Moby Dick 40 years later, but it wasn't a metaphor when it occurred. It was a sperm whale choosing, twice, to direct its full mass against something orders of magnitude larger than any natural predator it had ever faced, and succeeding. The spermaceti organ sits atop the skull in a structure that, in large, mature males, extends to approximately 10 meters in length. It contains spermaceti, a mixture of wax esters and lipids that is liquid at body temperature. Below it sits the junk, a compartmentalized section of fat separated by connective tissue partitions. Together, organ and junk form what Norris and Harvey described in a 1972 NASA technical report as an acoustic resonating and sound-focusing chamber used to form and process burst-pulsed clicks. A click originates at the phonic lips at the front of the right nasal passage. Air forced through under pressure creates an impulsive broadband pulse. That pulse travels rearward through the spermaceti case, reflects off a posterior air sac, and travels forward through the junk, which acts as an acoustic lens. The layered lipid structure bends and focuses the beam before it exits the animal's forehead into open water. Multiple reflections between air sacs at each end produce the characteristic multi-pulse structure measurable in any sperm whale recording. Zimmer and colleagues, in a 2005 Journal of the Acoustical Society of America paper, described the click as composed of a primary event followed by a train of reflected pulses, spaced by the time required for the event to travel back and forth between air sacs, reflectors, at each end of the organ. Two hypotheses compete with the acoustic primary function. Clark proposed in 1978 that temperature-controlled density changes in spermaceti could regulate buoyancy at depth, cooling the oil slightly on descent and warming it for ascent. Subsequent analyses identified major anatomical obstacles and a negligible whole-body buoyancy effect, and the hypothesis remains contested. The ramming hypothesis, more recently supported by finite element analysis, addresses a different function entirely. What all three hypotheses share is recognition that an organ occupying up to a third of the animal's total body length isn't incidental engineering. The investment is too large to serve a single marginal function. Sperm whale clicks measure at on-axis source levels of approximately 230 decibels, referenced to 1 micropascal at 1 meter, the standard underwater acoustic measurement. Merle and colleagues, in a 2005 Journal of the Acoustical Society of America paper, wrote directly, "The sound levels measured make sperm whale clicks by far the loudest of sounds recorded from any biological source." Underwater measurements use a different reference baseline than airborne measurements, so that figure does not translate directly into an everyday air decibel equivalent, but the biological claim stands independently. Nothing alive generates comparable active acoustic power for any purpose. Theoretical detection ranges for adults are estimated at around 300 meters. The animal scans a third of a kilometer of open ocean in total darkness at depth, navigating complex prey fields and selectively targeting individual organisms with every click. Some researchers have proposed that clicks of this intensity directed toward a non-prey species at close range could produce physiological disruption, tissue effects, or disorientation beyond simple acoustic detection. The hypothesis was motivated partly by a genuine biological puzzle. How does an animal this large, with teeth only in the lower jaw,
consistently catch fast-moving squid in total darkness at 1,000 meters depth. One proposed answer was acoustic stun, sometimes called the biological Big Bang hypothesis. The 2016 study by Faze and colleagues, published in Scientific Reports under the title Sperm Whale Predator-Prey Interactions, involved chasing and buzzing but no acoustic stunning, tested that specific question with acoustic tags on Norwegian sperm whales. The finding was definitive for prey capture. Click intensity drops by 20 to 40 decibels in the terminal capture phase, the moment of closing on prey. Received acoustic levels at the prey during that phase were well below debilitation thresholds. Tunnisson's 2020 study confirmed this independently. Buzzes initiated at a median of 24 meters from prey, with geometric transmission loss further reducing received intensity at the target. Capture uses active pursuit and suction. The stun mechanism does not operate during prey acquisition. The search and approach clicks, the ones running at 230 decibels, remain at full operational power continuously. Some researchers believe that a large animal entering that acoustic field at close range in a defensive encounter rather than a standard foraging context could experience meaningful physiological effects. No peer-reviewed medical case reports document tissue damage in humans from natural sperm whale clicks, and experienced divers working routinely near clicking whales describe the sensation as startling rather than injurious. The question of what a 230 decibel acoustic field does to an orca at the range a defensive encounter creates hasn't been answered with clinical evidence. What has been established is that nothing else in the ocean operates a sustained 300-meter active acoustic scan at this power level. Whatever sensory environment a defensive sperm whale creates around itself at depth, no other large predator in the ocean moves through anything remotely like it. There is one aspect of sperm whale behavior that has no equivalent in any other apex predator, and it requires a deliberate moment to picture correctly. In January 2008, Patrick Miller at the University of St Andrews and colleagues published a paper in Current Biology titled Stereotypical Resting Behavior of the Sperm Whale. In scientific usage, stereotypical signals consistent, species-wide, predictable behavior, not an anomaly, not an individual quirk. Sperm whales sleep near the surface with bodies oriented vertically, perpendicular to the sea floor, heads pointing upward, hanging motionless in the water column at approximately 14 meters below the surface. In pods of 5 or 6 animals, sometimes more, for sessions of roughly 10 to 15 minutes. Approximately 7% of the sperm whale's day passes in this state. These animals run 16 meters in length and weigh 45 tons or more. Picture 5 or 6 of them clustered together in open ocean, hanging vertical and completely still in dark water, generating no sound, producing no movement. The surface sits 15 meters above. The open ocean drops away below. No sign of life is visible from the outside. The Current Biology paper records one observation with exact precision. A group of vertically drifting whales were atypically non-responsive to a closely passing vessel until it inadvertently touched them. A boat made physical contact with a sleeping sperm whale pod before the animals reacted. The sleep state was that deep. Whether sperm whales enter full bilateral unconsciousness, both brain hemispheres offline simultaneously as in human sleep, or some form of unihemispheric rest isn't definitively resolved. Most cetaceans use unihemispheric sleep, keeping one hemisphere active to manage breathing and locomotion. Sperm whales can drift passively with surface currents, removing the need for active swimming, and may allow a more complete withdrawal from consciousness than other marine mammals can achieve while at sea. What the data confirms is that for 10 to 15 minutes at a time, these animals are functionally absent from the world they dominate during waking hours, hanging vertical in clusters at 14 meters, motionless, in open ocean where nothing is guaranteed. There is no clean visual reference in human experience for encountering a sleeping sperm whale pod at sea. 6 shapes the size of school buses, suspended perpendicular to the surface in dim water, perfectly still,
not responding to sound or approach. The animal that generates the loudest biological sounds recorded anywhere, that scans prey fields 300 meters ahead in total darkness, that can reach 3,000 meters depth and return. At that moment, it's making no sound at all, and doing nothing that resembles the thing it's. At 3,000 meters depth, a depth sperm whales are believed capable of reaching in dives approaching 2 hours, ambient pressure runs to approximately 300 atmospheres, roughly 4,400 pounds per square inch. The ribcage does not fracture under that load. Flexible cartilage connecting ribs to spine allows progressive compression rather than structural failure. The lungs collapse under increasing pressure, reducing nitrogen absorption and protecting against decompression sickness. Muscle tissue is saturated with myoglobin, the oxygen storage protein that gives sperm whale flesh its characteristic dark red-black color. An onboard oxygen reserve enabling breath holds far beyond the capacity of any other large predator in the water column. On descent, the circulatory system shunts blood to the brain and heart, leaving peripheral tissues to manage at reduced supply. At the surface, after a deep dive, the skin can appear vacuum-sealed against the tissue beneath, wrinkled and compressed in ways the Wikipedia entry on the species describes as having been likened to a prune by whale-watching observers. The compressed appearance isn't disease or injury. It's the surface expression of a body engineered for conditions that would destroy any other predator of comparable size. The foraging domain sperm whales occupy, below 1,000 meters in total darkness, at pressures no other large-toothed predator regularly enters, belongs to them alone. No competition below. No effective predation pressure from above sufficient to alter their use of it. Lavery and colleagues published the mechanism in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B in 2010. The title was unambiguous. Iron defecation by sperm whales stimulates carbon export in the Southern Ocean. The central finding states it directly. By consuming prey at depth and defecating iron-rich liquid feces into the photic zone, sperm whales instead stimulate new primary production and carbon export to the deep ocean. The mechanism proceeds as one continuous consequence of how this animal hunts. Sperm whales dive to 1,000 meters and beyond, consuming iron-rich prey, primarily squid. They return to the surface to breathe, and in doing so, defecate iron-rich liquid feces into the photic zone, the sunlit upper layer where photosynthesis occurs. Iron fertilizes phytoplankton blooms. Phytoplankton absorbs atmospheric carbon dioxide. When phytoplankton die, a fraction of the fixed carbon sinks as biogenic material to the deep ocean floor, the biological pump, where it remains sequestered for centuries to millennia. Net result? The Southern Ocean sperm whale population removes substantially more carbon from the atmosphere than it adds. The paper calls them a carbon sink. Then the historical reckoning. Industrial whaling substantially reduced Southern Ocean sperm whale populations during the 19th and 20th centuries. Lavery's calculation is direct. The reduction in sperm whale numbers due to whaling has resulted in additional carbon remaining in the atmosphere annually that the pre-whaling population would have drawn down. The removal of sperm whales changed the carbon budget of the Southern Ocean, and the budget hasn't recovered. The predatory function and the ecological function are inseparable. The sperm whale dives to hunt. Returning to the surface to breathe necessarily means returning to defecate at the surface. There is no version of this animal that forages at depth without fertilizing the surface layer on return. The apex predator and the carbon engine are the same animal executing the same behavior. Both things happen every time it dives. The evidence does not support a simple statement that orcas fear sperm whales. What it supports is more specific and more instructive. Orcas can attack sperm whales. The 1997 California encounter was lethal. The 2025 Honduras paper documented another confirmed kill, and multiple additional encounters have been recorded across the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. Sperm whales aren't invulnerable. What the evidence establishes is a cost structure that is categorically different from every other orca hunt on record. Under 2 minutes, one orca, one great white. That is what the shark costs. 35 orcas, 4 hours, wound and withdraw strategy sustained across repeated attack waves. Adult males standing off until the target is already incapacitated and isolated. That is what the sperm whale group requires. And some encounters, including the February 2024 Bremer Canyon confrontation, end with the orca group leaving without a confirmed kill. The 2013 Cure playback study showed sperm whales interrupting profitable foraging dives and aggregating defensively the moment orca vocalizations were detected. The behavioral cost to sperm whales is real. The operational cost to orcas trying to overcome them is also real, and higher than anything else in the ocean imposes. That asymmetry is the hierarchy made legible. The orca calculates whether a sperm whale pod is worth 4 hours and a coordinated group. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The great white never receives a calculation. The great white receives under 2 minutes of starboard's attention, and then it's over. Nothing in the ocean hunts great white sharks more efficiently than an orca. Nothing hunts adult orca groups at all. And the animal that forces orca groups to run a cost-benefit assessment, that makes them choose between pressing a 4-hour attrition campaign and simply leaving, is simultaneously the most powerful active acoustic emitter in the biological world, the only large predator operating regularly below 1,000 meters depth, an established intraspecific combatant whose skull architecture evolved partly to deliver and absorb impact, capable of sinking a 238-ton ship in a deliberate 2-stage ramming attack, and the principal carbon pump of the Southern Ocean. Starboard killed a great white in under 2 minutes off Seal Island. The animal sitting above that, the animal that changes the orca's operational calculus, didn't need to demonstrate anything. Every tier of the hierarchy below it arranged around the fact of its existence. And each time a sperm whale dives to depth and returns to the surface to breathe, it draws carbon from the atmosphere into the deep ocean, where it will remain for centuries. Not as an incidental side effect, because that is what this animal does when it hunts. The system does not end. If this is the kind of story you came here for, subscribe. There is more.